members to take their seats. Okay, I will now call the meeting to order and welcome everyone. This meeting, colleagues, has been called pursuant to the standing orders, and this all has to do with the report card issued by the Information Commissioner of Canada. It was tabled in April 10th, actually. It was entitled Edit Time 2008-2009 Report Cards, Systemic Failures Affecting Access to Information of Canada. And last week we did have the Associate Deputy Minister and two other officials from the Department of the Environment. And today we have with us from the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, we're pleased to have Mr. Gerald Cassette, the Associate Deputy Minister. He's accompanied by Madame Roxanne Dubé, Director General Corporate Secretary, Monique McCullough, Director Access to Information and Privacy Protection Division. So I want to welcome each one of you. Before you make your opening comment, Mr. Cassette, I just want to make a few opening comments just to set the context of this hearing. As I indicated, this hearing arises from the report card issued from the Information Canada, and it grades various departments within the Government of Canada as to their compliance with the Access to Information Act. The report clearly identifies a number of systemic problems within various departments who are basically failing Canadians in providing timely information in accordance with the legislation, the laws, which are the laws of this nation. And of course, the report card identifies other departments that, through leadership, are able to provide timely access, all in accordance with the legislation. According to the report of the information, the reasons for this failure include lack of leadership, inappropriate use of time extensions, time-consuming consultations, insufficient resources, deficiencies in record management, and problems with the delegation process. The Information Commissioner graded all 24 federal departments. 5 departments, unfortunately, received a rating of 1 of 5, or an F grade. And, of course, one of those was the Department of the Environment. The other departments or agencies were Natural Resources Canada, CEDA, the Correctional Services of Canada, and Canadian Heritage. However, and unfortunately, there was another category worse than an F. The Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade received a rating of 0 out of 5, or as the Information Commissioner reported, a red alert rating. The committee considers this matter extremely serious, and the findings of the Information Commissioner very serious. It does go to the very heart of what I would classify the rule of law and the ability of Parliament to hold, and not only Parliament, but the Canadian people to hold the executive to account. And as a result, we have decided to call before it yourselves, representing the department. So we're pleased to have you, and the floor is now yours, Mr. Cassette, for your opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. En ma qualité de sous-ministre.
As Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, I'm pleased to appear before you today. I understand that my department was invited to come before you today as a result of the Information Commissioner's ratings as part of her special report to Parliament in April 2010 entitled Out of Time 2008-2009 Report Cards and Systemic Issues Affecting Access to Information in Canada.
Provide additional information in this regard, as well as my department a progress report in response to specific recommendations made by the Information Commissioner. At the outset, I would like to assure this committee that in accordance with the principles of openness, accountability, and transparency, the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade is committed to respecting applicants' right under the Access to the Information Act and the Privacy Act. As the Information Commissioners reported, the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade faces unique challenges associated with internal and external consultation related to our national security and international relation interests. DFATE acts as a central agency across government in reviewing implications for international relations under Section 13 and 15 of the Access to Information Act. Other government departments must consult DFATE prior to releasing records that impact international affairs. En 2008-2009,
In 2008-09, 42% of the overall ETHI workload at DFATE consisted of consultations from other government departments. This Information Commissioner acknowledged, and I quote, that DFATE was severely hampered by its overwhelming workload, and she noted that our growing complexity of requests and related consultations. She also noted that requests and related consultations are ever more complex, as well as the challenge of a rotational workforce. Over a 4-year span from 2004-05 to 2008-09, there was a steady annual increase of requests for access and consultations under both the Access to Information Act and the Privacy Act, for a total increase of 78%. Since then, there continues to be an array of very sensitive and challenging ATIP requests, with a chronic shortage of ATIP specialists in the federal government. And with this shortage of specialists, which is chronic in the federal government, the ATIP demands surpass the available experienced resources. Despite this, the Information Commissioner acknowledged that DFATE was able to process almost 1,000 more ATIP requests in 2008-09 than the year before, as well as make a number of process improvements. For example, improvements since 2008 include, and I'd like to emphasize the following:
single gateway ATIP tasking process across the department, which established just over 100 dedicated ATIP liaison officers in all branches and bureaus of the department. These liaison officers also received continuous ATIP training in order to ensure ongoing compliance. Second, a department-wide ATIP awareness program to ensure that officials across the department understand their roles and responsibilities vis-à-vis ATIP, which includes customized ATIP exemption training for subject matter experts. In 2010 alone, the ATIP office, and that includes also the officials at Passport Canada, delivered just over 300 separate ATIP-related training sessions. Monthly ATIP performance reports to senior management have improved overall departmental understanding and commitment to ATIP compliance. The program areas respond on average to almost 90% of all ATIP requests on time, that is within 5 working days. Fourth, our ATIP professional development program is addressing recruitment and retention issues. This program has been very popular and is clearly demonstrating its benefit given the number of well-trained, productive, and committed ATIP analysts. Et finalement, le Bureau de l'accès à l'information et de la protection des renseignements personnels.
The ATIP office revamped its internal guidelines to assist ATIP analysts in the processing of requests, as well as more recently introduced ATIP processing service standards to ensure that more attention is being paid to legislative due dates. However, the reality remains that DFATE had been carrying forward from year to year a growing backlog of ATIP requests that are beyond the legislative time frames. This was something not only of concern to the Information Commissioner, but of great concern to the department as well.
To inform you that in June 2010, the department reallocated $2.7 million of additional ATIP funding. This injection of new funding will, among other things, permit the Department to clear the backlog of ATIP files by summer 2011, as well as build additional permanent capacity to meet expected demands. Experienced ATIP consultants were hired in July 2010 to work on the backlog project, and real progress is being seen. So far, the backlog team alone has closed 135 late ATIP files and cleared 95,000 pages. In addition, 10 new full-time positions were recently created in the ATIP division and are in the process of being staffed. These efforts, among many others, have shown some key overall ATIP improvement so far in fiscal year 2010-2011. For example, the number of late files for those new requests received since April 1st, 2010 has dropped to approximately 5%. And our turnaround time to respond to consultations from other institutions has gone from 110 days to an average of under 60 days. These improvements are encouraging. Je pourrais ajouter que le ministère des Affaires étrangères et du Commerce.
I might add that DFATE follows Treasury Board Secretariat best practices in its administration of the acts. For example, the director of the ATIP office has full authority delegated by the head of the institution for the administration of the acts. The director's position is 2 positions removed from the deputy head in the organizational structure. DFATE has sound practices for the processing of all access to information requests, and a collaborative approach exists between the ATIP office, the offices of the heads and deputy heads of the institution, communications, parliamentary affairs, and program officials. I can assure the members of the committee that the procedures followed by my department do not allow for any political engagement in the redaction of documents. I can state categorically that I have never seen evidence of inappropriate ministerial involvement in the release of information, nor has any such involvement been brought to my attention.
Procedures followed by my department do not allow for any political engagement in the redaction of documents. I can state categorically that I have never seen evidence of inappropriate ministerial involvement in the release of information, nor has any such involvement been brought to my attention. As a final remark, I would like to reiterate that DFATE is very committed to responding to access to information requests and is assisting all applicants to exercise their rights under the Access to Information Act and the Privacy Act. I'm happy to take any questions or comments that the committee members may have. Je serai heureux de répondre aux questions des membres du comité, Monsieur le Président. Merci. Thank you.
Merci, Mr. Cossette. We're now going to start the first round, the 7 minutes each, and I'm going to go to Dr. Bennett first.
Thanks very much. Congratulations on the fact that it looks like you're finally winning a little bit in terms of, sounds like bailing a big leaky boat with a thimble for a while. It's worrying in your remarks that when you mention a chronic shortage of ATIP specialists in the federal government and that ATIP demands surpass the available experienced resources, you're saying that you've now put some resources, additional money in, but it means up till then other things seem to be more important than access to information because it didn't have the appropriate resources. So will your department be undergoing a strategic review?
It depends what period we're talking about. If you're talking about the period from 2005 to 2000 and now, the department has going over a series of cuts, not only strategic review, but other cuts.
And going forward from now, where your departments are being asked to find 5% cuts and also cap on salaries, how how will you protect these gains that you've made? And can you give this committee any assurance that there will be no cuts made in this area?
There will be no cuts made to this area. I mean, the $2.7 million was found this summer through internal reallocation, and that money is permanently being dedicated toward, the processing of ATIP requests.
And so do you feel now that you are fully staffed?
Our capacity for the processing of files right now is around 240,000 pages a year. That's the current capacity. With the increase of 10 new ATIP analysts, we should be able to process 315,000 pages a year, which should be sufficient, unless there is a very, very significant spike in demand that is unforeseen at this moment.
In the report card, the Information Commissioner was pretty clear that DFAID should be taking a much more proactive approach to sharing information. That obviously Afghanistan has taken, the attention. What are you doing now in a proactive way, such that 100 Canadians aren't asking the same question? That if it had been available up and online, your workload would be seriously reduced.
We are doing three things right now. We have built a team of 12 people who will spend all their time getting rid of the backlog, which we accumulated over several years. That's the first component. The second component is that we will staff the full complement of the 52 FTEs that we have for the ATIP division. And as I said, with that number of people, we should be able to process 315,000 pages a year. With regard to the third component of the plan is to try to move as quickly as possible from a paper-based process to an electronic-based process. So there are basically software and tools that are available in the market now that we could use, and we will build on that as we move forward.
Is there a plan, or would it take a big change in government policy to be able to put the requests up online as you receive them and the answers, so that Canadians would know what someone else has already asked, and that wait for the timeline as they have interest in that same area?
Do you have an answer for this? I thought it was already.
Yes, I'd be happy to respond to that. Currently, the Treasury Board Secretariat is working with the ATIP community, myself included, to have a more proactive approach and to make available on the departmental internet sites the summary of requests being made under ATIP legislation. And my office is currently, and has been for many years, routinely provided access informally to previously released records. So we would never require an applicant to come back and go through the formal process to obtain the same records that were previously released. So the initiative that is underway right now with the Treasury Board is to make it available, those summaries of requests, and to provide on an informal basis, so to be more transparent in terms of the type of requests that are being submitted to the departments, so that interested parties can simply obtain copies informally. There is no immediate plan to put all the records.
The word copies, I guess, worries me, in that I think what we're asking is previously released documents. I guess most people feel that now they should be up online, digital, and searchable.
Yeah, absolutely, and no one would disagree with that, except that there is quite an issue with the translation costs. Anything that has to be published on the Government of Canada website must be in both official languages, and therefore our entire release packages would have to be sent for translation, which would be a huge burden and cost to the Government of Canada.
And so how are you going to solve that in terms of moving to open government?
Myself, right now, as I say...
does it require a change in policy in that things could be up online in their original language?
It would definitely be a change in policy from the centre. It would not, of course, defate...
And if someone asked to have it translated? seeing that the request came in one language, the request came in French, and it was answered in French, right?
The rights of access and the right to have something translated is normally through a formal request under ATIP legislation. There would be, at this time, no legal obligation to provide a translation of thousands of records that are published online.
But when you provide the copies, as you say, of something that had been pre-released.
It is in the language that it originated.
That's right. So it's a separate stringency that you are allowed to send out copies in just one language, but you're not allowed to post it in just one language. Is that correct?
It's when you're publishing to a larger mass, when the Government of Canada posts information online, it is required, the Government of Canada policies, to have it in both official languages. That is the issue right now with the open government issue.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bennett. We're now going to move to Madame Tilak. A minute.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here today. My first question will be about the intervention that you made, Mr. Cossette. You mentioned that there is an increase in requests for access to information over the past 4 years, but could you also confirm to me that during the 2007-2008 period, the number of complaints because of the backlog has also doubled? Answer: I cannot confirm these figures for you. We can send these figures to you in writing, on paper, in these coming days, and when the treatment is too long, of course, there are more complaints. Now, you said that have you lowered the number of the days to 60 days, and less than 5% of the number of requests are in the backlog. But for the rest of them, about an average of 15 days that it could take to deal with these requests. Answer: it is difficult to tell, inasmuch as we don't get uniform requests. They don't always put the same questions. They don't come from the same department, so it's very hard to detect a general tendency as a whole. But if you want these figures in detail, we'll have to send them to you in writing. We're told that Quebecers and Canadians are wondering about how transparent our institutions really are, and this backlog in access to information increases this feeling. And couldn't we put online more documents? Putting more documents online would help to face the number of requests, though the cost of translation would be an extra cost. But people will be able to consult your internet site and see how many, and at the same time, there will be so many less requests. So couldn't that balance things out? Wouldn't that sort of pay for the cost of translation, because these documents will be provided to more citizens, will be able to have less need for requests, and significantly less. It's very difficult to tell right now what the savings could be if the requests were automatically put online. But certainly the long-term trend would be to use internet and put everything online for easier access. Has this already been envisaged by your department? You say that it's hard to assess such costs, but has your department already carried out these studies? Answer: this has never been studied by our department. The central agencies are dealing with standardization of the way that requests could be put online for the Government of Canada as a whole, but there is no clear answer to this question at this time. When you mention that over the past 4 years, there's an over 70% increase of requests for information, and Quebecers and Canadians are having an increasingly hard time getting information directly, and even the media. We, the MPs, when we question the government, we often have difficulties, and we have no other choice left but to use this medium that is available, as the Access to Information Act calls for more openness and more distribution of information. Would help us stabilize. When you spoke about this 68, could you give us some figures, number of requests per year? The number of access to information requests currently. We get various kinds of requests, various consultations, and there's about 3,100 requests per year on an average. Now you're telling me that it's 60 days? And in fact, you've brought the figure down by half. But what is the objective in the number of days? What are you aiming at? 60 days, or would you like to decrease it even more? 60 days means requests that need interdepartmental consultations. We're not talking about the requests that exclusively deal with DFATE. And 30 days is what the law requires, and that's our objective. And for 60 days, it's interdepartmental. But for the other requests, how many days? It's different for each request. Each request received has to be evaluated to see whether the documents can all be gathered together in the prescribed time. Can you give us an average? No, we can't. No, can't give you an average. 95% of the documents received since April 2010 were treated within the deadlines, either within 30 days or with the needed extensions if need be. And you said that translating this and putting it on internet, you'd have to have it translated if you want it up on internet. So now when you receive a request, either in French or in English, do you answer the applicant in the language that the request came in? And you don't systematically translate everything. And for one request, it could happen that this request could be requested over and over again in the same year for the same matter, and later you'll have to translate answer. Theoretically, the answer is yes, but right now I have no figures to show you what the real cost would be. With your permission, currently, it is only once or twice a year that certain documents will have to be translated. There might be some requests with 1,000 pages of translation, but I've never seen any case where someone asks all the relevant documents to be translated, sometimes only 1 or 2 documents. Very seldom does the applicant ask for information in the other language. They know that there is access to information in the format, in the original format, and very seldom do we have to translate. Thank you, Madam Tilak.
Thank you to the folks from Foreign Affairs and International Trade for being here today. Mr. Cossette, I noticed that in the annual report to Parliament on the administration of the Access to Information Act for 2009-2010 that the department filed with Parliament, or tabled earlier this year, that it goes to some pains to list out the department's key priorities for the year 2009-2010. Which I guess are the overall department's key priorities. I know it's a very broad department that has lots of work on its agenda, but I was curious, in looking through that, I don't see anywhere where compliance with the Access to Information Act or resolving the problems identified by the Commissioner appears in that list of key priorities for 2009-2010. I know the report goes on to talk about the work that's being done, but it doesn't figure in that list of priorities. Is that an indication that this really doesn't figure anywhere in the broad perspective of what's important to the department?
I assume, Mr. Chair, that we're referring to the Report on Plannings and Priorities, the RPP.
Well, I'm looking at the document on the annual report to Parliament on the administration of the Access to Information Act.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And in that it says the department's key priorities, and it lists greater economic opportunities for Canada, United States and the Americas, Afghanistan, asserting Canadian leadership in emerging global governance, transforming the department. But nowhere in that list is there even, that I see, a reference to improving the record on complying with the Access to Information Act.
The issue you're referring to are policy issues, with the exception of one management issue which encompass lots of work that is being done in the department, which is the transformation side of it. So we do not list in details all the basically management priorities that the department may have. But I think that the $2.7 million we just committed, in fact, to trying to eliminate the backlog and provide the ATIP unit with the capacity it will need in the future to meet the demand is a proof that the department is committed, in fact, to ensuring that Canadians have access to information from our department.
Well, let me come back to that, because I'm still concerned that even though transforming the department is one of the priorities that's listed in that document, that when you go through the various things that are listed in that paragraph, compliance with access to information doesn't even seem to make the list of all of the various things that are in that paragraph. Does it just not impinge on the consciousness of those people who develop those priorities, or why does it not show up in a list like that for the department's priorities for this year?
Well, as I said before, I mean the priorities that are listed there are either of policy nature, and there's one, management priorities which refer to the transformation of the department. I think what we outline in the presentation, again, I think is a guarantee or a proof that the department is committed, to making sure that on the long run Canadians will have access to the information within the time provided by the law.
When you were developing the business plan around addressing the concerns around access to information, and I note that you got $2.7 million to work towards that, what did the business plan show that you really needed to do the job? I'm sure you didn't get everything you needed. What was the cost estimate of meeting the requirements of the Access to Information Act and the concerns of the Information Commissioner?
Basically, there are three components to the business plan. The first component is to provide more or less $1.2 million to address the backlog. When we looked at the backlog in July, we realized that we had 2,010 pages of backlog. So we looked at basically what was required to get rid of that backlog over a period of time. So the first, $1.2 million was allocated toward that task. The second $1 million is allocated toward creating 10 new positions of ATIP specialists in order to increase the capacity of the department to respond to the growth in demand. Moreover, once the backlog is gone, the $1.2 million, which is now permanent funding, will be transferred to the regular ATIP operation. And the third component of the business plan is to purchase and implement basically a system that will allow for access online, and not access online, but working within the department online so that we can process the files, much quicker and easier.
Mr. Cossette, I noticed in the report card section that that the commissioner drew attention to the department hiring consultant Andre Delagrave to make recommendations about how to solve some of these problems. The commissioner said that she believed that it was necessary to implement those recommendations. Can you tell us how Andre Delagrave's recommendations have been implemented and how they relate to what you've presented today in terms of the work plan to get to the bottom of compliance?
Merci. Nous avons demandé effectivement.
In fact, we asked Ms. Delagrave's services, who is very well known in the field of access to information, and she basically said that we should try to bonify our internal processes, optimize these processes to have a better performance. And she looked at our resources as a whole, and she recommended an increase in resources, which, as you can see, has already been done. And she recommended that there should be a better collaboration between the Access to Information Unit and the various sectors. And to this effect, we targeted our coordinators in the field of ethics in all our sectors, and she recommended that we give more training to the agencies and departments that deal with access to information. And as you saw in Mr. Cossette's report, we've done this as well. More than 300 training courses have been given, and we're setting up a tutoring system which will help people to continue their education and access to information. And these were 4 main recommendations, among others, but we acted upon them all.
The question I had also relates to another report, and I know that Dr. Bennett was asking questions related to this as well. The independent panel on Canada's future role in Afghanistan recommended that the government, I'll just quote what was in the report card, that the government should provide the public with franker and more frequent reporting on events in Afghanistan, offering more assessments of Canada's role and giving greater emphasis to the diplomatic and reconstruction efforts as well as those of the military. Mr. Cossette, can you tell me how the department has implemented that recommendation, or what it's done to address that recommendation of that panel?
Well, as you may know, the government in fact release on a regular basis report with regard to the activities of the government of Canada in Afghanistan, both from military, diplomatic, and aid standpoint, focusing on benchmark that the government has established years ago, and how basically on a quarterly basis the government of Canada meet or does not meet these deadlines. So through that report, Canadians are informed as to what our activities are in Afghanistan.
Okay, Bill, that's it. Thank you very much. Mr. Polly, 7 minutes.
Oui, merci d'être venu.
Thank you for coming. I have before me a report for from the Information Commissioner entitled, and I'll begin with page 33, the English version.
DFAID is responsible for Canada's foreign policy and all matters relating to Canada's external affairs. DFAID's specific areas of responsibility include international peace and security, global trade and commerce, diplomatic and consular relations, administration of the Foreign Service and Canada's missions abroad, and development of international law and its application to Canada. Étant donné ce liste de responsabilités,
given this list of responsibilities, and the sensitive nature of the relations that they imply, could you describe a specific notion regarding access to information that you have in your department and that would not exist in the other departments. I would emphasize 5 or 6 components at this time. I think that one of the first problems is globalization. Access to information requests deal with a host of files, even as far as disarmament programs that Canada might have funded in the former Soviet Union. So the files cover almost everything under the sun. And these files have to be reviewed not only by experts in access to information, but also by the experts officials from DFATE. That's the first thing. Secondly, there is a complexity of requests. Sometimes we get information for foreign governments or from third parties involving several departments. For example, environmental protection on an international level, we have to consult environment and natural resources. So it's always complicated. There is never any issue that is only restricted to one field or one subject. And these requests sometimes come in at the same time as when the same files are before court. So we have to be very careful about what we can publish or not. And fourth, we have 171 foreign missions. And depending on the questions that are put, these missions must be taken into account, and the government as well. And we could have an organization with permuting agents. Somebody can have a file with and 2 years later, when we get the information, this person is somewhere else, and there's a 78% increase. We're trying to catch up.
Increase in demand, which, I mean, we haven't matched with a very significant increase in resources as well.
Quels sont, quand on fait...
When you manage relations with other countries, and when you try to maintain relations that are diplomatic and friendly with foreign governments, does it present difficulties to Canada and our system of access to information? To put this in context, we see the international WikiLeaks debate, and the damage, or the perceived damage, that followed upon the publication of these documents. When dealing with foreign relations, is there a certain sensibility that is different, that may not exist in another department that is more domestic? Answer: obviously, in the discussions at the international levels, the people we talk to expect that the comments they make to us are protected. Sometimes the interventions are very open and frank to make sure that our counterparts understand exactly what we mean. Sometimes we speak in a roundabout way, and sometimes also in a very frank way. And this being said, all this has to be protected. And we have to ask these third parties if we can publish what they say and what is acceptable to be published in Canada is not necessarily acceptable in other countries. How much time do I have left? So that's all for now.
Here, the minutes of the meeting of this committee, which was held on October 18th, 2005, 5 years and 43 days ago. It basically dealt at that time with an F report that the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade got from the Information Commissioner. You basically weren't following the law. And I'm just going to quote you a few sections because what I'm reading is almost verbatim what you're saying today. I'll read it to you. And it talks about a plan to overcome the deficiencies. We believe that the plan that we're now putting into effect will lead to these outcomes in the long term. Then it goes on later. As was mentioned above, the workload at the department's ATIP staff is a major factor in our ability to meet the legislative deadlines. Goes on, the plan proposes adding 15 employees. Then it goes on, Mr. Cossette, some of these actions include the development of a structured ATIP awareness program to educate departmental employees on their roles and responsibilities, a program that will include senior management to build a network of knowledgeable officials at every level, implementation of new procedures for the review of documents by the division, which will eliminate most return visits by ATIP staff, and in addition, the ATIP process has been carefully mapped and is being redesigned to increase its effectiveness. Purchasing, and this is important, the ATIP image software application already been in use for a number of years in most departments, etc., etc. And then it goes on, however, I believe that by approving this action plan, the most senior levels of the department have demonstrated a clear, etc., etc. I'm just having real trouble getting to grips. What is different with that? And the result hasn't improved any in the past 5 years. What is different from those statements that were given by a Mr. Michael Calcutt, he was the Director General, Executive Services Bureau, Department of Foreign Affairs? What was the difference between that testimony 5 years and 43 days ago and the testimony you're giving here today?
What I would say, Mr. President, is that there may be the impression that nothing has happened since 2005. But what I may confirm to you is that in 2005 and 6, the department was spending a bit more than $2 million on ATIP. For the current fiscal year, the department will be spending $8.2 million to respond to ATIP. So it's not as if the department hasn't tried to increase its capacity, since 2004. However, with a growth of 78% over that period of time, we've been playing catch-up. As soon as we get rid of the backlog, and that has been part of the issue as we have carried this backlog from 1 year to another, the duration of the time it takes to process demands, of course, has increased in response to this backlog. So by getting rid of the backlog and by building the capacity at 315,000 pages a year, that capacity should be sufficient to respond to the current volume. Moreover, we will have, once the backlog is gone, a capacity to increase by another 10, 12 analysts the capacity of the ATIP unit to respond to an increase in demand. If you're telling me, will that be sufficient if WikiLeaks leads to thousands of demands in access to the information, it may not be sufficient. The problem we face is that a bit more than 42% of all demands sent to the Department of Foreign Affairs are initiated in other departments. That's a factor we don't control. So we are always in a responsive mode. But with the capacity we're putting in place right now, we hope that, in fact, we will be ahead of the wave, not behind the wave.
And who in the department is accountable for doing this? Is it you? Obviously, it wasn't Mr. Calcutt. Is it you, or is it Madame Dubé, or is it who? Like, obviously, you'll probably be back here next year. I don't think we'll leave it another 5 years. So who is accountable for dealing with the problem?
As deputy ministers, we are accountable for dealing with the problems.
But you're not the deputy minister.
I'm the associate deputy minister.
So is it the deputy minister that's accountable, or is it you?
It's me, it's the deputy minister, and it's the third. We're 3 deputy ministers at Foreign Affairs and International Trade.
So you take personal responsibility?
I will take personal responsibility for this.
Okay, second round, Mr. Easter, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one question coming off the last exchange. In terms of the backlog, once you get rid of the backlog, you'll certainly have quite a number of resources freed up to deal with the immediate requests as they come forward. How much staffing would be involved in resources now in just dealing with the backlog?
We have 12 people now dealing with the backlog.
So that, okay. I do believe it has to be difficult for the department. You in your remarks, you certainly basically preempt the discussion on political engagement and the redaction of documents. And I understand that, but I will say this, that it's got to be difficult for the bureaucracy is being asked to be transparent, and the laws are in place to push it. Yet we have a government that is in place at the political level that is absolutely consumed by secrecy and spin. I think Canadians kind of forget. They talk about openness and transparency, but I think they forget how open previous governments were. Cabinet meetings, when cabinet meetings were over, cabinet ministers walked out of the cabinet, faced the media, each and every one of them. If media had a question, that now cabinet meetings are held somewhere and nobody ever hears of them. There's very few people, very few ministers talk to the press. Press conferences.
The government at no time, no cabinet minister ever interfered. So I think the point that the member is making is out of order.
Well, Mr. Easter, yeah, I'm going to ask you to, I do allow a little leeway, and you can make your preambles if you want to use your 5 minutes, but perhaps we could just, we do have I think, a fairly serious issue in front of the committee dealing with the inability or the real problem with this department, which has been going on for 5 years on this issue. To deal with this issue, perhaps if you could try and zero in on the report of the Information Commissioner and the problems that I think there's enough to keep us all going for the rest of the meeting.
There's no problem there, Mr. Chair. I just think there's an even greater problem in terms of secrecy that really needs to be mentioned on the political side, because I think all the pressure is on the bureaucracy when we've never seen such lack of transparency on the political side in so many forms. So I just think that needs to be mentioned. So in terms of you're not allowing any political engagement, and as you know, we've had some difficulties with some other departments. What is the process that you follow in dealing with ministers' offices to prevent that? What's the process that you follow that others have not been able to? You send an access information document up to the minister's office, somebody reviews it. What's your process that has worked in your case?
I mean, Madame McCulloch may explain in detail the process, but my understanding is that the request comes to the Office of Access to the Information. It does not come to the minister's office. Therefore, the minister's office is not aware of requests that we receive as they come in the department. We process the file, and then we inform the senior bureaucrats as well as the minister's office when basically the files will be made public, and that's the process.
So you have a request on well, just ABC. The request is dealt with through your access to information people. Then you do, and I understand why you do this. I understand why the minister needs to know. He could be walking on the street and get a question, he or she. So you just inform. How much time before you release the access to information request or information to publicly to the people? do you inform the minister's office that an access to request document has been released?
We do inform the minister, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, 72 hours before the access is released, before the demand is released.
So the minister has 72 hours notice then. The other area I had related to the $2.7 million that you said in your remarks today that you have basically secured going forward. Where did that money come from? I mean, there is no there is cuts. There's the strategic review. What's been given up in order to make available that $2.7 million? I mean, I come from Prince Edward Island. We do not have a passport office there, and we dearly would love to have one. We're at a real disadvantage. In fact, the MP's office end up doing a lot of the passport work. If there was more money available, maybe we'd have a passport office. So where did the money come from? It doesn't grow on trees. Where did it come from? And what was cut or reduced in order to gain that $2.7 million for this effort?
The money did not come from Passport Canada, since the Passport Canada budget is protected. It's a revolving fund. None of the money that comes to Passport Canada out of the fee structure is transferred to the Department of Foreign Affairs. So there is a barrier, between these two budgets. With regard to the $2.7 million, basically we have reallocated internally resources from several parts of the department to the ATIP unit. I cannot tell you specifically. We have a $2.4 billion budget. Out of this, $1.8 billion is what we call O&M, operations and operational money. So therefore, there is, if you look around the department in several places, a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there that account for the $2.7 million. We have 171 missions abroad, so you may, basically cut missions by, tiny amount of money and transfer the money to the ATIP budget, which is what we've done, and this is what we do on an ongoing basis. As priority changes, the department shifts money around to meet these requirements. So this is something that we do as manager on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Cassette, and your colleagues for being with us this afternoon. Certainly, I don't expect you were any happier to see the report card than we were, so I wouldn't mind hearing your comments about that after I get done asking some questions here. I think that we need to be very clear that this government definitely is opposed to issues where there is not access to information. We definitely support access to information. And I think that when we look at where you are today from where you were in 2005, with spending 4 times more on ATIP issues, that certainly stands behind the statement that I've just made. So I want to make it very clear that this government strongly supports access to information, and we are doing what we can to make sure all departments are moving forward on this issue. And I want to commend you for the way you have moved forward, how you have cleared up this backlog. And I think that's quite remarkable, that the amount that you've done so far and the plan that you have put in place to move ahead with that. The fact that you're going to have a full staffing complement, I think, is excellent. The fact that you have found the money that you need to implement this full staffing complement through adjustments internally is commendable. That is what we, as responsible government, expect our departments to do, and that's exactly what you have done, so I commend you for that. It's not always the fact that we need to be throwing a whole lot more money at things. What we need to be doing is operating in the way that's the best advantage to Canadians, and I think that you are doing that. So I congratulate you on that. I wanted to just talk a little bit more about the, you're talking about going from a paper-based system to a software-based system, and we also talked about some of the challenges of translation costs. Is there a way to go to the
software-based system and avoid the issues with the translation. We know that we must abide by the issues as far as the 2 official languages go, and I'm certainly not suggesting that we don't. But is there a way, policies put in place that can be achieved?
I want to clarify one thing. When we're talking about moving from paper-based to electronic-based or digitally-based system, we're talking about a way to manage the information internally first so that we can be more efficient and faster at processing the information. One of the challenges we have right now is that we do not have, a single database where we collect all the information. Some of it is paper-based, some of it is electronic, some of it is highly classified, some of it is unclassified. So we do not have one single system where all the information is available. So the first thing we need to come up with is an electronic system which will allow us to get to the information much faster than what we have right now.
So you weren't referring to a public electronic system?
No.
Okay.
No. That's an issue which is being looked at as we speak by central agencies as to how you would standardize the information across the government and how you would put that on the web, in fact, for easier access by Canadians. But the government and central agencies haven't proposed anything specific yet, and a decision hasn't been taken with regard to that. In terms of the issue of the official languages issue attached to the posting of information, Canadians have the right and do expect that as they access government information, that information will be made available to them in both English and French. So at this stage, to be honest, I don't have an answer to your question as to how that could be done. If Canadian were to request the information in the language in which the information is available, and that would be sufficient, that's one thing. But, the government and governments have a long commitment toward official languages, and therefore everything that has to be posted, electronically has to be in both official languages. And that's the policy as it stands.
Okay. Is there any area in particular through this entire process in your departments where the greatest delay occurs? Like, is there any one area that you can pinpoint it to?
Issue related to national security, of course. Every time you need to speak to a foreign government about security, if it's kind of routine matters, it may be easier, but every time you're talking about, national security issues, every time you talk about intelligence issues and how that, information was gathered, collected, and so on and so forth, that makes the transfer of information or the release of that information extremely difficult and sensitive.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now going to go to
Mr. Chair, just in view of the fact that this session is televised, I guess I just would want to make clear that when the member from Sarnia speaks as her government, that it's very important that as members of Parliament people understand the difference between government and Parliament. As members of Parliament, our job is to hold the government to account, regardless of what side of the House we sit in. And it is extraordinarily important that when the member speaks as though she is speaking for the government, our government, that she is not a minister, she's not a parliamentary secretary, and therefore she remains a member of Parliament whose job is to hold government to account. She is not part of the executive branch, she's not part of the judiciary, she's part of the parliamentary branch whose job it is to hold the government to account. So I just caution the members opposite. It is as a member of Parliament who has been in the backbench when our party was in government, it was very important for me that when there were items that needed to be fixed for people with disabilities or tobacco or others, we were prepared to speak out against. And this our kind of language is very confusing to the people of Canada. I find now I have to correct when I have a name tag that says Government of Canada on my name. I actually have to have it corrected. And every day we must make this clear to the people of Canada. What we at committee do here is to hold government to account as the House of Commons. And I would just caution the members opposite to not use that kind of inclusive language that is confusing to Canadians, that they speak on behalf of the government.
Okay. Some people might think that Ms. Bennett or Dr. Bennett is being overly technical or playing with words, but there is a very important distinction, and I'm not criticizing anyone here, and we all have to be very careful, but the primary role of a member of Parliament is to hold the executive to account for the legislative and the delegate authorities given to it. And a member of Parliament, whether it's government member of Parliament or opposition member of Parliament, does not speak for government. And the term "our government" or "this government," and I know it's a fine line, but it really ought not to be used, because the government members of Parliament, opposition members of Parliament have their fundamental role is to hold the government to account. And of course, the government cannot function if it does not have the competence of Parliament. So anyway, it's a point. I think it's an important point. I think we just have to be a little more careful in our wording now.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Poilievre.
Yes. Just to clarify, Ms. Davidson is a member of the government side of the House of Commons, and she's one of the members that provides confidence, the confidence that is necessary for the government to continue to stand. She is very much entitled to refer to this government as her government. In fact, any Canadian who is not even elected to Parliament can refer to this government as their government, and would be doing so in a manner that is not only true, but would be a truism. If you're a Canadian citizen, we have, and you recognize the authority of the Canadian government, then by logical extension, this government is your government. But beyond all of the obvious logical linkages that would provide for the members to use the language she did, there is a long-standing tradition of free speech that exists in this country and is celebrated in this Parliament, which permits her to say whatever she likes. And we, on this side, and I could say on behalf of this government, are very proud of the good work that she's doing here in this committee.
No, and I agree with you, Mr. Poilievre. She can use that, but I do think there is a distinction, that the chair has pointed that out, and there's nothing, I don't take offense to the word, but I think it's important that the distinction be pointed out, and the point be made that there is a fundamental role for all members of Parliament, government, and opposition to carry that out. So we're going to go back to Monsieur Guillemot at 5 minutes.
So Wayne says this government.
Yeah.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As my colleague was saying just now, what I find is that this situation is only emphasizing the cynicism we have vis-à-vis politics and the lack of transparency of our institutions. I find all this rather sad, and we know that the current government has an appetite for controlling information, so we can easily argue from cause to effect. So I'm going to come down to earth and I'll ask you some concrete questions. I hope you have the answers. Everything that happened, specifically the year 2008, 2009, and a bit before, did you have any budget compressions? Did you have any increase of your staff going into retirement that could more or less explain the situation? The Department of Foreign Affairs, as well as all the other departments of the federal government, has been undergoing budget cuts since 2003. The departments have been cut since 2003, not since 2007-8, but since 2003 that our departments have been cut. When the departments had to get used to less resources. So what kind of cuts, can you mention, let's say in 2003, can there be any kind of causal link of cause and effect with the situation that made this year so difficult? I can say that despite the cuts since 2003, the budget for the Access to Information Unit has continued to increase. In 2004-2005, the budget for access to information is $1.2 million, and now it is $8.2 million. At the very moment when the rest of the department is being cut in its programs as a whole, the access to information went up in its expenditures. When we come with this kind of backlog, with these long delays, do you have any kind of system for setting priorities? Do you have any priorities or scale of priorities of what is more important as a request, or are they all treated equally? Well, the priority is first come, first served. That's all there is to it. Thank you. That's quite clear. Thank you very much. Just now you said that there was a chronic shortage of specialists. Could you explain what these specialists are? And are these specialists inside your department, or are these specialists that you could perhaps hire as external consultants? And sir, there are two components in the treatment of requests. There are two specialists who are legal specialists on access to information and the protection of privacy. And this group is much more difficult to recruit in the federal public service as a whole. It's not just our department. Every department finds it difficult to recruit these people. And secondly, when we have to do specific questions, like when the department is organized around various elements, such as geographical elements or international security or intelligence, then there is a shortage of people who are specialized in access to information and privacy protection. These are the ones that are difficult to recruit. As far as the other kind of experts are concerned, they're not hard to train. So you have external consultants? Answer, yes, we do. When we have to get through the backlogs, we have 9 external experts who had worked in the public service as experts on access to information. A brief question. In 2008-2009, when there was this blockage, did you have to wait for the commissioner to tell us about the problem, or were you aware of it yourself, and did you start finding concrete solutions right there? Answer, we were already conscious of the backlog because it was already there in 2009, 2010. And given the growing demand, this was cumulative over the years. Sometimes there are very, very long delays for various reasons, for various requests. Sometimes the delays can go up to hundreds of days, as people say. And we would like to have some resources that would be exclusively on the backlog and other resources that would work exclusively on current work. Thank you.
And thank our witnesses for being here today and for the very informative presentation. You've helped us understand, at least to a small degree, some of the complexities that you deal with, especially when you refer to the national security issues in Section 13 and Section 15. So that's been helpful to me. And the disappointing part for me in this is that all too often there are the innuendos that there's somehow some ministerial or political interference in these ATIP requests and the responses that are given. And I thank you for stating categorically today that you have never seen evidence of inappropriate ministerial involvement in the release of information, nor has any such involvement been brought to your attention. I think this is really helpful in dispelling some of the myths that are often propagated by political opportunism. And unfortunately, we've seen a couple examples of that today. I was only going to say one example, but since that, we've had a few others. I want to just come back to some statements you made in your report here. The one comment that you made about the 78% increase in requests, that's phenomenal. I mean, we talk about inflation and having to live within our means. It's hard for me to understand how any department could possibly grapple with an increase of 78%. So the Department of Environment also indicated similar challenges. On the next page, you talk, though, about the fact that you're hiring increased number of ATIP consultants, and I'm just wondering, what is your source for these specialists? Are you stealing from other departments, or is there some stream of new consultants that are available to you?
In fact, the consultant we hire are former public, servants who were specialists in ATIP matters.
Now, would they require additional specific training as it relates to foreign affairs because of the Section 13 and Section 15 requirements? It would seem to me there would be some fairly significant additional training required.
In some instances, we have to hire people who have, security clearances if the files that need to be reviewed have security implications. So you may have specific cases for which you need people with the right security clearance, and sometimes there's a limited number of people who have that kind of access or that kind of clearance.
Well, I think it's important that all of us around this table, and indeed Canadians, understand that this isn't just as simple as putting out an ad and getting a flood of applications. I think that's really crucial that all of us are aware of that. Just finally to ask about the funding envelope that you've indicated here. An additional $2.7 million has been allocated, and if I understood you correctly, the total for ATIP within the department is 8.2?
8.247, basically 8.25 million for the current fiscal year.
Well, and then you also mentioned that there may be some trade-offs required from time to time between ATIP funding and possibly foreign missions, and I think it's important that we as parliamentarians grapple with that. I guess I have a question. Where will this ATIP ballooning of requests end? Is there any end, or do we have to cap it at some point in order not to shortchange some of the very important work that departments do? I think it's important that we don't shortchange some of the missions abroad, and I wonder if you could respond to that.
As long as Canadians are interested in government affairs, you will have, requests for access to information.
One more minute. Well, I understand the request for access, and I think it's important that legitimate requests are honored and answered in a timely manner. I have no problem with that. But the skeptic in me begins to wonder if some of these requests are actually requests for information's sake, or simply to make a point. And I know that you can't judge that, nor can I. But I am concerned that we don't simply go down this path and have an unwieldy budget that ends up actually shortchanging some of the significant work that we expect the department to do, which is their primary focus. It should be their primary focus.
There is always the danger that the resources, you're spending on ATIP may not be sufficient, as I said before, if there's a significant spike in demand. So what we're trying to do this time is to be in front of the wave, not, behind the wave. We have, seen a very significant increase, since 2004. We seem to have plateaued, but we'll see. Hence the need, basically, to build the capacity that will respond to a surge if there were a surge in demand.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albrecht. Mr. Sixay, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Grosset, a while back, the Chair reminded us of the testimony of DFAID officials 5 years ago, and in that he mentioned the hope that a new tracking system would be established, and you mentioned it had a name back then. Is that system in use now, and are you talking about implementing something else now, or just how do those two systems relate to each other, or are there in fact two systems?
I will ask Monique to provide more detailed answer, but yes, there are two separate systems. The one that we advertised in 2005 is in place, has been in place for a number of years now. What we're talking about is a different capacity.
Yes, I'm glad to follow up on that. Yes, absolutely. My former Director General, Michael Cott, I was there at the time, made reference to the necessity to purchase an ATIP imaging system, which was for the ATIP office to be able to move from a paper-based environment to an electronic redaction process, so that our analysts are not literally still using a pink highlighter and taking a document only for them to run it through a photocopier that will, the old Canon photocopiers that removed the pink highlight, those were our redactions. Now our analysts have had use of image since I believe 2006 now, and it's a very efficient process. What we're talking about now, it's the next generation, is that currently we receive the bulk of the records that are subject to requests in hard copy. And what we are trying to do is create that interface between My ATIP shop and the program areas, so they can simply upload the relevant records in electronic form, so they're not having to to take electronic records, put them in hard copy, only for us to then scan them and put them back in an electronic form. It's to provide efficiencies that way. That's just one example of the functions of this new software.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Cossette, the fact that Canada is a country at war, how has that affected the access to information process? Is that one of the main causes of the pressure that the department is under with regard to access to information? The extra work that's related to being a country that is at war?
One of the most prominent topic we have on our access to information list is Afghanistan. And issues pertaining to detainees and issues pertaining to our actions in Afghanistan at large, yes.
So is that responsible for the backlog? If we weren't at war, would the backlog be more manageable? Would the work of ATEP coordinators at DFATE could we handle it?
I cannot answer that question. I don't know the answer.
But right now you say it's a significant, is it the most significant issue that you deal with in terms of the difficult pieces of ATEP requesting?
In terms of difficulty, that's another issue. In terms of volume, we know that it's one of the most popular topics, if you wish. We're talking about Afghanistan, mining, United Nations, Cuba-Canadian relations, and trade agreements. Those are more or less the most common demand right now.
And do you have percentages related to those?
Not with me, no.
Okay. I wanted to ask specifically about the third recommendation of the Commissioner, that the office that she recommended that Foreign Affairs and International Trade Canada immediately cease counseling other government institutions to close files when there is the prospect of a Section 13 or Section 15 exemption, and follow through instead with the mandatory consultation process in a timely manner. Now, I know that the department responded that would be done immediately. Can you tell me how that was actually implemented? What did that involve to get that message out that kind of counseling was to cease immediately?
I'm happy to respond on behalf of Mr. Cossette. Basically, just to provide some explanation on that, is that a big bulk of our workload is responding to consultations from other government departments for Sections 13 and 15 of the Act. Basically, it's information that may have been obtained in confidence from a foreign government, for example, an international organization, or that the release of the information could, in and of itself, have possible impacts to our international relations. Is a big part of the work, and what we were doing is when another government department was facing a legislative deadline and they did not want to go late on their access request, because they're the ones that receive the access request, they're consulting us. When we were not in a position to respond within their timelines, sometimes they would ask for the response within 2 weeks, for example. If their legislative due date was approaching, we were suggesting that they withhold those portions to safeguard that international relationship, for example, and to provide an interim response to their applicant, and that we would follow up with the response once our consultation abroad, for example, was completed. The Information Commissioner did not approve of this practice, in that the Commissioner felt that we were encouraging other government departments to shut down their requests while there were still outstanding consultations. And so we simply, the process to stop that practice was basically to revise our response letter to the other departments when there was an outstanding consultation, to tell them that they could invoke and close their file. We've removed that. It remains at the coordinator's discretion for that particular institution whether they feel that they are going to provide an interim response and close their file in order to meet the legislative due date, but we are no longer suggesting that they can go ahead, invoke the exemption, and close their file. So it was just a matter of removing it from our templates.
So do you know how that's affected the...
You're way over time here. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Dr. Bennett, 5 minutes.
Just a question around the actual accountability and enforcement of this. I think the chair has raised, and I think I've been here long enough that quite often the researcher whispers in your ear in the chair of a committee saying that's what they said last year. That in some ways this is what was said 5 years ago. The numbers you presented in your speech today are indeed improved or look optimistic, but what is the ministerial accountability of ongoing F ratings, and what are the consequences within a department for a deputy minister or an associate deputy minister or the Director General Corporate Secretariat or the Director of the Access to Information and Privacy Protection Division? I mean, what happens if you keep getting Fs?
It's my responsibility to make sure that, the performance of the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade improves. So this is what I'm asked to do by my deputy minister, and I will be judged on the outcome of the work. It's the same thing with regard to Mme. Dubé, who's the Director General of the Corporate Services, and same thing with Mme. McCulloch, who's the Director of ATIP. So what we've done this year that we did not do in previous years, we ask people to report on a monthly basis as to where they are in the processing of their files. So we have the capacity on a monthly basis, the same way we do with other responsibilities managers may have, to ask them, okay, with regard to delivering on time, where are you? Is it 80%? Is it 90%? Is it 100%? So we have a capacity now to track, basically, if people are delivering on that commitment. Moreover, we have included in their performance agreement the obligation to deliver within, the time frame provided to us by the law, bearing in mind, of course, that they have capacity or they don't have capacity to do it.
So I come from healthcare, and in health we have wait times all the time, and all of the experts in wait time say drain the pool, like just drain the, because what we were hearing before is carrying over backlogs year to year doesn't work. So are people working overtime? I don't. Does everybody just go home at 5 o'clock every day with huge backlogs year to year to year? Or how do you actually fix this? Because you keep talking about capacity, but I'm not really sure. What are the consequences, and what to a deputy minister that keeps getting an F? And where does the ministerial accountability fit in, where the minister says this just isn't good enough, or I'm still not seeing the consequences.
Well, the minister accountability is to the government and to Parliament. So that's an issue for Parliament to discuss with the government. With regard to our own accountability, we're being asked to deliver a certain number of things, I mean, within the legislative framework which is provided to us, and that's what we're trying to do, given the availability of resources to do so. So now that we have the financial resources and the capability to deliver within the proper time frame, it is my responsibility and my accountability to make sure that in 18 months, if I show up at this committee, I don't repeat the same story we've seen in the past. This being said, given the current backlog and given the fact that the Commissioner will report on the current fiscal year, we do expect to have a bad score next year as well, because we need to get rid of it. Then we'll be in a position basically to meet the proper deadline. So there is an expectation on my part that I'll see another F for this year as we get rid of the backlog. Next year should be much better. But there is a lag time here that has to be taken into account. We have to build the capacity, we have to get rid of the backlog, and then the new score will come in.
Just to, very, very quick. I mean, I'm really concerned about the WikiLeaks. And I really think that's there's several problems with that, but concerned about the point of view that senior people and indeed ministers may be fearful of being frank and talking to their counterparts. But as it relates to you, do you not expect there will be a real avalanche of requests? I mean, Harold talked about 78% increase. That's astronomical, but I think with what's out there in the media now and hundreds of thousands of other documents to come out, of which they're likely named, do you not think there will be, what's your judgment on that? I mean, this is going to really impact foreign affairs, I think.
Well, we're expecting WikiLeaks to release some 270,000 documents. There's a limited number of these documents, a little bit more than 2,000, that relate specifically to Canada-U.S. relations. They may be mention of Canada in hundreds of thousands of documents. Those references be relevant to Canada's foreign relation, or are we just being mentioned in passing, Canada was at the table, or will it be about specifically what some of our heads of mission may have said, or some of the discussion we may have had with foreign countries? That remains to be seen. So depending on the issues, there may be a very significant interest in questioning the government about some policies, current and past policies, or not. I'm in no position to tell you if it will represent hundreds of thousands of pages of requests or no request at all. My assumption is that there will be a demand for this, given the size of the leak.
Thank you, Mr. Easter. Ms. Block, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I would like to join my colleagues in welcoming you here today. I appreciated hearing your opening remarks, and I guess I want to go back to the Information Commissioner's 2008-2009 report card at a glance. In the third bullet, she states that DFATE received more consultation requests than access requests and started the year with a backlog of 459 cases. You noted in your opening remarks, as the Information Commissioner reported, DFATE faces unique challenges associated with internal and external consultations related to our national security and international relations interests. And then you identified for my colleague that with foreign governments consultations, they are a particular factor in lengthening response times to requests at DFATE. So my question is, to what extent does DFATE use information sharing agreements to clarify in advance what can or cannot be disclosed at the time the information is originally obtained?
Information sharing agreements are signed most of the time on very specific issues. The exchange of intelligence, for instance, as it relates to specific circumstances. If we're talking about the general conversation that diplomats may have, there's no specific arrangements we have with foreign countries for these things. This is diplomacy on a daily basis. This being said, as I was saying before, there is an expectation of confidence. We are being told things because they know this discussion will not become public. So as the request comes in and we're asked to release that information, there is a requirement, even if it's just, a polite requirement, to ask foreign government if they would be in agreement with releasing the information. So some of the information may be, substantive enough that it should be protected. On some other issues, they may be willing to release it publicly, the same way they would do in their own country.
Okay, thank you. My second question, I want to pick up on my colleague's observation regarding the 78% increase. You stated in your remarks that over a 4-year span, from 2004-05 to 08-09, there was a steady annual increase of requests for access and consultations under both the ETHI for a total increase of 78%. Why were there so many increases over those years? What reasons can you give us for that huge increase over that period of time?
Unfortunately, the only thing I can do is to observe the increase in terms of why there was an increase. There may be, multiple reasons why Canadians decided to go, to proceed through that route instead of any other means available to them.
Okay. I want to follow up with another comment that you made. You said, despite this, the Information Commissioner acknowledged that you were able to process almost 1,000 more ATIP requests in 08-09 than the year before, as well as make a number of process improvements. And my understanding is that happened before you were able to employ the additional 12 officers. So how did you manage to do that?
I would have to ask the ladies at this table who were in charge of that operation.
Well, we did have additional operational funds in that fiscal year to also have on hand ATIP consultants to help us. And there were, in 07-08, there were 12 positions. This has been a gradual increase in capacity over the years, because in 07-08 there was an increase of 12 permanent resources as well that were unfortunately cash managed due to the financial situation of the department. So they were cash managed 07-08 and 08-09 and were actually made part of the permanent reference level in early 09-010. But so it's just to say that in 08-09 there was additional capacity, both permanent and consultants put forward to try to address it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do I have?
No, there's
Okay.
before the 19th. Okay, Madame Tilak, 5 minutes.
Merci.
Thank you. You just mentioned, and I'll come back to questions I just put to you earlier. The first, we're talking about a 5% backlog. What kind of requests, any particular or specific type of requests in that category, or can any kind of requests be found in that pile, or are there often requests of a certain type that need a certain complexity that wind up in this 5% answer? We should analyze this 5%. For sure, the requests involving more than one department or foreign governments or security investigations from the Department of Justice, all this is more complicated and takes more time. So when you receive a request, so how do you proceed? How do you deal with it? Who has the power to say that? Often you have experts. Let's see, I send you a request and you're going to explain to me why does it take so many days? How is this being dealt with as a request? I'm not talking about an exceptional case, but what does your worker do when, from the time he opens the envelope till the time that the reply is mailed out? Well, 30 calendars is 21 days, working days. So we lose a few days right there. Within the first 48 hours, the text is identified as being really from our department, and we identify texts in our department that might have this type of text, and within 48 hours we have to assign the new request to an analyst. And another thing that is done during the first 48 hours is that if we see that the text of the request needs clarification, or if the request is so vast that we'd have to give him every last detail about Afghanistan in 2007, we have a big problem. So we'll try to communicate with the applicant to try to understand exactly how big his request really has to be. And we also have what we call ETHI tasking, a program that it takes 5 days, 5 working days to give an answer. And within those 5 days, programs need very detailed research. They'll try to do whatever they can to find every last document that is relevant. They could be hard copies or various files and various electronic networks, and there could be information abroad as well. So this takes a lot of research. And if we ask them not only to gather the pertinent information, but also to review and analyze it and tell us in their own words that what this publication could do harm to our international relations. So you can have information about the international reaction. Well, what we do is we make an analysis to see that we have rationale and justification. The experts tell us regarding, for example, international relations. My analysts have to be convinced that this meets the exemptions of the Act. I have many delegations. I have the full delegation to answer all the requests. Are you the only one to have it? Answer no. How many people have this assignment? Myself and three delegated directors, Ms. Dubé, and the deputy ministers also have that delegation, but it's really my office that takes the pressure. Well, we work closely with the commissioners, investigators, and if we need extra research, we get in touch with the program and we see what we can do to make sure that more information could be disclosed.
I probably won't use the full 5, so I'll share my time with Mr. Calandra, if I may. I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Cassette, you said that you were the one who was responsible to see that this situation improved and that the report card, the next report card, will certainly show improvement. Can you tell me how long you've been in the position you're in and how many people you have on your team?
I've been the Associate Deputy Minister since the 1st of June last year. If you're looking at my team, I don't have a team per se. I have my office and I have 4 assistants on my staff.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I'll now pass the rest of my time to Mr. Calandra.
Thank you. Thank you. I won't have a lot of questions. I think most of my colleagues have answered have asked you a lot of questions. But I'll just take a moment, if I can, just to stray a touch and just thank the department. I know it's been an extraordinary year for them with a very successful G8, successful G20, and of course the visit of the Queen, and of course we're negotiating free trade agreements with a lot of different countries in the European Union. So it's been a very, very busy time for you. So I wanted to thank you for that and pass on my thanks to the entire department for their hard work. I heard what my colleague from Prince Edward Island had said, Mr. Easter, and I know he lamented some of the difficulty with the passports. I come from a riding, of course, that has 170,000 people, which I think is more than the entire island of PEI. So I can understand sometimes the hardship with passports, but my office, of course, is quite capable of helping out where possible, and I'm sure that the 4 members in PEI, or perhaps the 3 others, can at least pitch in when Mr. Easter's office gets a bit overloaded. You had mentioned earlier that what was your budget 2005? You had mentioned a budget figure for 2005,
In 2005, the overall spending was $2.23 million.
$2.2 million.
Yes,
okay.
in 2005, 2006.
2005. Okay, so yeah, it's clear to see why you were getting bad report cards in 2005. Now, of course, in 2006 there was a change in government, and that coincides with the shining of the light with respect to access to information around this place. And finally, a government was elected that really opened up government to the people, and I'm proud to say it's my government. And of course, it was expanded.
One speaker. You're with the floor.
Oh, sorry. Of course, it was expanded. The right side was expanded last night by 2 members, but as you know, we increased. I think there's 70 new institutions that are responding to access to information requests, and we're moving a lot faster. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll get some other ones in there. Perhaps the CBC will start to listen a bit too. But do you feel that your budget, you said, was now 8.25, close to 8.25 million? Am I correct on that?
Yes.
So a significant increase from where the previous government in the decade of darkness had you, but which is quite encouraging. So you're obviously moving in the right direction. And I wanted to. There was a quote I have here from the analyst report, and they did a comment. The analysts for a good report says the ATIP office is pleased to report that in June 2010, DFATE was able to reallocate $2.7 million of additional ATIP funding. This injection of new funding will, amongst other things, permit DFATE to clear the backlog of ATIP files by the summer of 2011, as well as build additional permanent capacity to meet expected demands. So I think overall we're moving in the right direction, and I'm very encouraged by what you've said, because I think you seem to have be moving the office in the right direction, and I hope that if you do run into difficulties in the future, you'll be able to come back to us and let us know what we need to do to encourage you to get to the A that we also want to see. But final comment, how effectively are you at working with other departments to learn what they're doing to meet the backlogs? Do you work with other departments? Are you working in a silo? Or has the light that we've asked to be shined on government really been shone across government as a result of some of the changes that our government has made since 2006?
Do you want to take it, or I can take it? In fact, we are exchanging lessons learned with departments across town. In fact, the ATIP experts in all departments work together to make sure that best practices are being implemented across government. Mm-hmm. The issue, of course, is that we have our own obligations given the international mandate that we have to pursue. Therefore, there are limitations on the kind of lessons learned we can share with others.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sure. Thank you very much. That concludes the questions. Before we adjourn, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Cossette, if you've got any closing remarks or comments you want to make to the committee.
There are 2 things, Mr. Chair, I would like to stress. The first one is that we do expect that the Commissioner's report for the current fiscal year would be a bad report, given the fact that we need time to implement or to put in place the initiative that I have talked about. And, unless there is a significant unforeseen increase in demand, we are on the right track, and we should be and we should see, next year, a significant decrease in the delays in the processing of applications. So I am confident that we will significantly improve our performance over the coming year, and hopefully, not hopefully, but should be in a position to come back to you and show progress.
Well, Mr. Cossette, Madame Dubé, Ms. McCullough, I want to, on behalf of all members of the committee, thank you for your appearance today. It's an issue that I want to leave you with the message that the committee certainly views very seriously. It's an issue that, needless to say, the committee will be following up on. It has been long-standing for many years. Canadians expect other Canadians to follow the law, and certainly other departments to follow the law. And I think if I could use an analogy, if I come in April and said Canadians, one of the laws that we follow is to file an income tax return. If I come in and my income tax was complicated or I didn't have the resources to file it, I don't think we get a very sympathetic ear. So I just want to leave with those comments, and again, I want to wish you all the best as you move forward. I think your heart's in the right place, and we'll certainly be dealing with you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, meeting adjourned.